Hello and welcome back to Deconstructed. I'm your host Sam Animo Mackenzie, and with me, as always, Harry C. Doyle Richards. So,
Sea Doyle.
C. Doyle, mate. You know you.
Sea Doyle. What's that even
Yeah,
mean?
don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. If you don't know, it don't matter. Anyway, how you doing? How you doing, mate?
Yeah, doing well. Back in the swing of things. Not travelling for a while. We could get back into these.
Got a PC that works again now. That one's good.
Yeah, headphones back on.
Fantastic.
Bringing the AirPods is over. Great news. Absolutely great news.
Right, so I don't really care. So today we were going to talk about Bleed, but Bleed is so phenomenally dog shit that it's just not really worth our time. To be honest, I kind of thought they'd at least make the closed qualifier, but I guess some people can't register for open qualifiers.
That's harsh. It is harsh. Lance wasn't hospital. Lance wasn't hospital. They had like 7 practice days. But yeah, we're going to wait and see on Bleed. I imagine they'll still be dog shit, but it's probably at least called dog shit just yet.
They will be dog shit. But according to Lurpus, that's 7 inefficient prac days, I'll have you know.
Yeah, got to be like at least 16 hours. 16 hours of scrims.
But yeah,
6 hours sleep.
If you're not tied down to your desk, it's inefficient. So anyway, we thought we'd talk about Big instead. Because if we were going to talk about a shit team, we may as well, talk about one that actually sometimes gets to play lands when they're invited because of partner systems. So Big, they're all right online. They're pretty good. They're about as good as Big has ever been online. They go to a CCT. Well, I say go to a CCT. They log on to a server for CCT. They probably win it. Fair play. But on LAN, they're comparatively
Go.
They're quite disappointing. They are just quite disappointing. Like, I don't think this Big team is particularly good, but I think they're even worse than they should be a lot of the time. And I think that's a bit odd occasionally because they have some decent pieces. I'm just not sure they have decent pieces in all the places that they need to. But what's your thoughts about them, Harry?
I mean, it's one of those. People don't like criticizing Big because they're kind of one of the last bastions of the kind of the old school Counter-Strike way, right? Like they're at least mostly a national team. Mantoo's obviously here, which we'll get to later. But they're kind of keeping that spirit alive. They're keeping the German scene alive. But it also is kind of the explanation of why teams have moved away. Like that, as much as they can sit in theory meetings all day and, well, they're not even speaking in German, I guess, but they can sit in theory meetings all day and be this uber tactical team and work things out that no one else works out. But at the end of the day, it's still going to always limit them against these other teams. And Germany's never been a country with a really deep talent pool to start with. This project was always one that was more about, like the love of the game, the passion for your region or whatever. It was more about that than winning trophies, and it always has been. It always has been. Tabsen's not signing 7-year deals because he thinks he's going to win a major. He's signing those stupid long contracts because this is what he loves. Him and Godby just want to bring up the next half of German talent. And honestly, it is respectable. But if we're going to talk about them as an actual Counter-Strike team, then yeah, there's going to be some areas where we're going to look at and we're going to go, this is your ceiling. You're not going to be, like we talk about national teams being a little bit better than, like, I'd rather be a shit national team than a shit international team, right? Like everyone would rather that. But how shit before it's not worth it. And I think Big, they only played 4 big events last year. Only 4. Because they've missed Cologne's main stage, right? They missed Cologne's main stage and only qualified to Cologne's play-in because of the academy team winning like the national German league. Didn't qualify for the major. So it's hard to put a placement on them because they are so good online, and they're always going to be that team that is way better online with their 0 ping on the German servers.
And we've got B calling.
Allegedly. Yeah, so they're hard to place. But I'm one of those people who also finds it hard to criticize Big because I see a lot to like in the way they approach things. But we could have a go, aren't we? We're going to have a go at criticizing the darlings, the old Big.
I actually don't think we're gonna struggle criticizing them.
No, I think
because
there's lots to. I just think people are reluctant to.
I don't think. Well, yeah, okay, but I don't think we should necessarily criticize the pieces of the team so much, because I think for what they are trying to do, their pieces are probably as good as they're going to get. Like, I don't think, from what I've seen, Process is particularly good at all.
It's really tough roles.
I really don't think it. Yeah, of course, but there's players who perform better in those roles. I think Sin.
No, yeah.
I mean, I'll talk more about my issue with Sin later on, but from what I've seen of him, I think he's perfectly serviceable. Krimbo, I'm pretty sure. Me and you said that he should be in the Falcons team. I think he was in the Falcons team we built. If not, he missed out because we remembered one person that could go in above him.
Yeah, I think Magus was. We said if they could get Magus.
It might have been. Tabsen. Obviously there is the God B potentially getting to talk more online, so you can't really get a grasp of him as an IGL, but I don't think he's bad at it, and obviously a good player. Mantuu, serviceable. So instead of criticising, I actually think we should start with the positives of the team, and we can start with Krimbo because, me and you, we're really high on Krimbo. We think he's really good, and you can see from watching him, like, he passes every single eye test, even the worst eye test in the world or the best eye test in the world. He will pass them all. He's a very, very solid player, and Krimbo is now in that spot that Tabsen was in a few years ago. It has been really for as long as I can remember, where you look at him and it's like, okay, well, when FaZe lose this member, they should get Krimbo. When G2 lose this member, they should get Krimbo. And there's this host of teams that should get Krimbo, but it seems at the moment he's sticking by big, which is fine. Tabsen's done the same thing, and that's whatever. The problem is, for me, and this isn't a slight against Krimbo, and you can give your positives on Krimbo before you respond to this, but is Krimbo, in his roles, is he the right person to be the star of this team? Because it feels like he is, and he plays like he is, but should he be, would he be a better team's third or fourth, is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, 100%, 100%. When you talk about him in big teams, it is as the third best player, the fourth best player. He would be, he's a perfect JKS replacement. I would be shocked if G2 hadn't, because we know Krimbo signed a new contract recently, and they mentioned big teams chasing him. I'd be shocked if G2 wasn't one of them. He's ready-made JKS replacement, because he is, because this is the thing, and we talk about him as an anchor, and that can make you think he's got bad roles. He doesn't have bad roles. The way G2 play, they like having, because they've got the, Sin and Tabsen both IGLing. They have the full-on,
it's just Tabsen.
It's just Tabsen, but because Sin's the secondary caller, blah, 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 they have them in the rotator spots, right? That's the logic behind that, not that they're better players than Krimbo. So the Krimbo's an anchor because of the way Big operate on CT side, but he's really good at it, so why wouldn't you keep him there? T side, he's definitely a star player. He is an absolute baity boy. In the way that, good lurkers are, but if you look at his trading stats, you've got Process, Tabsen, and Sin all in the bottom right because they get loads of traded deaths and not many trade kills. And then Krimbo's top left with Rops and Blaine and people like that. He's not getting traded deaths because everyone else is dead normally. And that's fine. That's fine. You're in a team like this. He's the best player by far because Tabsen's not what he used to be. So he should be the baity boy, and he is the baity boy. And it's just one of those frustrating ones because you can see a skill set there that is so easy to translate to being, because he is now a specialist anchor. He's a really good fucking anchor, and that is really hard to get. And I think it's one of those where if you're gonna be the best player on a kind of smallish team like Big, if you're gonna be the best player and you actually carry them, you want your best player to be what, an entry fragger probably, or maybe an AWPer, someone, because Krimbo, a lot of the time, he will be in those situations where no matter how perfectly he plays his spot, his role, they'll just lose the round anyway. It's the same thing with Frozen and Robs.
You have to compare him to Flames and Dexter on OG, right? there's kind of like the similar level we're talking
it's easier for them
about.
Yeah, it's easier for them to shine, I think. I mean, Flames was in a similar boat, whereas obviously he could make a step up as a role player for a really good team. Like, that was kind of the obvious transition. And it's the same. It's the same for Krimbo. It's exactly the same. So yeah, that's kind of, he just feels like the que serato of big. And I think that's only going to get more true as time goes on, because there's so many projects where Krimbo, like even the Liquid team, I know they're going to want the Brazilian core, but Krimbo's a better player than Skulls right now. Like, I love Skulls, but Krimbo's a better player. He would have fit better, honestly. So
Krimbo's a much better player.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the kind of thing we're talking about. Like, he's definitely declined offers from teams that are better than big. So he's in the Tabsen Godby school of thought, where he'd rather play for a bad German team than a good international team. And that, you just got to respect that. At some level, you have to respect that he wants to do this.
Do you think it's that, or do you think it's that big maybe convince him of some long-term ambitions?
I mean, the thing with big that's hard to talk about is that I always thought, even when they got Zantaras and looked really good, if you're not speaking German, what's the point? And I think that's why we'll get to Mantuu, but I think I just don't get it. I don't get Mantuu. I think the main reason I think a big team will always kind of struggle and not quite crack top 10 is that without Searson, they just never going to have an all. They're just never going to have an all. And signing Mantuu is an admission that they don't think Hype is good enough.
Which he wasn't.
Any of it. Yeah, but this is the thing. You just need to. You needed Searson, man. Slacks does seem really good in M80 now. I think he would be the one you would have to try and get, because it's not even because Mantu's a bad player. Mantu's quite a good player, but it's big. You're in theory sessions 6 hours a day. Just sign to someone who speaks the same language as you. Like, it's such a big advantage.
Isn't it also a thing that Mantuu speaks German? Like, there's no reason to not be talking in German.
I don't know. I think he's like...
I swear he talks German.
He's got decent German, I think. I think it's a little bit like Exist in Heroic, where he could kind of understand what they were saying, right. But in-game it's still better for them all to comment English. Like, he's not quite good enough. Maybe I'm wrong. They were definitely coming in English last time we asked them.
No, they are. Well, yeah, they did say that.
So yeah, like if Mantuu couldn't get a better German, fine, keep him. But yeah, that's why I just think they're missing out. And I'm sure they speak German. Mantu's dead. I'm sure they do. But he's an AWPer. He's not dead all the time. Like, this is what I'll always criticize them for, is if you're going to lean in and you're going to sign Krimbo and Tabsen, people who could improve international teams, if you're going to sign them down to these really long-term contracts, at least speak fucking German, boys. Like, please. Because if big are going to go, like maybe the way Heroic went, and have a German core and international stars around them. So like if they have Tabsen and Krimbo, maybe you keep Sin, because, you know, that's kind of the future, and he's being groomed a little bit as an in-game leader. And then you have Mantuu, and then, you know, you replace Process with an international player as well. And then it's like an international team that still has like a German core, a German heritage. Fine. I'm fine with that. And then you still have Big Academy, completely German, and you're trying to get players from there for the future, and you can keep this kind of pipeline going. That's completely fine by me. But if you're going to have 4 German players and then 1, and then all speak English, I don't see the point. Like, have a German core and speak English, fine. But I just think they should go all in for 5 players. I think they should try Slacks, and if Slacks doesn't work, then you just have to go international. You just
well, that's
just tonight.
That's pretty much how I feel about it as well. But that's a point I'd like to come back to after we talk about the current team. I think you said everything I have to say about Mantuu, really. Like, I like Mantuu. I think Mantoo's a very serviceable AWPer. You know, he's never going to be a top AWPer. Like, he's not that guy. But for a team of Big's level, for a team of like OG's level, like these kind of teams, Mantoo's great. Like, Mantuu is as good of an AWPer as you can hope for, you should hope for, and you should be aspiring to as one of those teams. I don't want to talk too much on what you said about like getting another international player, but I agree. You know, if you're gonna speak English, like, fucking do that, or just, let Mantuu go elsewhere and speak German. I guess the issue with that, though, is that Slacks is, he's improved a lot on M80, but you gotta remember he did get kicked from, was it Sprout before an M80?
Yes, he was not good in Sprout when they went international.
Not being very good. And you can add in the but if he speaks German he'll play better. You can add in all that bullshit and he's gone and learned from another team, he'll learn from being kicked and all that bullshit that might be true for one case and the furthest thing from the truth for another player. But I actually disagree with you, and I think it's probably not worth doing just for the sake of speaking German, because all that we've seen so far is that he isn't very good in EU, and we're not even talking about a high level EU particularly. Like Sprout didn't play that many.
You've got to find a way to get Searson back, I think.
Oh yeah, of course. Like Searson, sure. Like absolutely, Searson is. I can't believe Searson is now playing at the level that he is playing at. I mean, there's reasons that aren't exactly public that makes me understand it to some degree, but even then, like he did it for long enough that it shouldn't be as much of an issue as it might be.
Losing, like, I don't know, Sis and Krimbo, like they're the two best German players. I think you just have to have both. I think you just have to have both if you're going to make this work. That's ultimately.
No, of course. And I actually think it's a bit of a shame we didn't get to see this big team with Searson. And I think with how he's played on OG...
0-0 Nation.
No, I'm on a different point.
Oh, yeah.
Like, with how he's played on OG, maybe the best German team you can get is like Sin, Tabsen, Krimbo, Searson and Keto. That might be I
think it's JDC, man. I think JDC for Keto.
It could be JDC. But yeah, okay. But I'd be worried about him being too similar to... Yeah, maybe not.
No, he's perfect. He's just a slightly better version of Process, because they're doing the Bitchwork T side, anchor shit CT side. Like, he's perfect. He's not a Beatty boy at JDC. He's not at all. He's a mid-round entry.
Yeah, okay. So, that could be a decent team, but even then, like, there's still something about it that tells me it can't be, and it's probably, the point I want to talk about next, which is Tabsen and Sin.
Mm-hmm.
So, Tabsen and Sin is something I do not fucking understand. Like, okay, you're big, you obviously want to keep Tabsen. He is the best German player ever. Like, you'd have to go far back
CSGO
to find one who is better. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, CSGO at least, Tabsen is the best big player ever. Realistically, top 20 riflers CSGO over the course of the game, potentially. Maybe extend that to top 30, but he's definitely up there. Like, he's a very good player. He should have won more than he has. And he becomes the IGL, which at the time felt like it was out of necessity. But, like with some of the results they had, it kind of made sense. In the end, it was like, okay, fair enough. They then have Sin, and they promote Sin, and there was the idea that Sin would become the IGL, which is what he did at academy level. And he'd already had his like stand-in period with the main team, because they almost made the
Rio.
They almost made the playoffs of Rio.
They challenges, I think.
No, they made... I can't remember if they almost made Legends or almost made Challengers.
No, they were at Rio. They were 100% at Rio.
No, they were at Rio. I mean, they almost made... I can't remember if they almost made Legends or they almost made playoffs.
They were 9th to 11th. 9th to 11th.
Yeah, okay.
At Rio.
Yeah, so they almost made playoffs, but obviously there was that thing where Sin didn't even have a sticker and Faben had it.
Yeah.
It was kind of ridiculous because Sin actually like didn't get good ratings, but he did play really well. In Rio, at least my opinion, he did.
He played the MR2 and everything.
So yeah, exactly. He played the entire run. So Sin coming into the team after his little experience in Tier 1 and then going back down and nurturing his IGL skills a bit more and coming in with the view to be the IGL, that made sense to me. You free up Tabsen, you get Star Tabsen back without him having to do the whole Star IGL bullshit. And if that was how it had stayed, I'd like this team a lot more. But there was a little confusion over who was doing it. I think it was around 4 groups time, maybe a little after.
The only land they play.
Cologne possibly. So I remember I interviewed Sin and then he cleared it all up. And I interviewed Tabsen last week and I asked him about it and he said, no, I'm still the IGL. There's no plans for anyone to take over, although there's a couple of people in the team who would be willing to. And I went further and I said to him, like, why do you choose to stay at the IGL? And he spoke about his enjoyment of the role, how much he enjoys doing it, and how much he likes that when the team wins, and it's because of him making good calls, the responsibility is on him. But also the same goes for when the team loses, especially when he's made bad calls, because the responsibility is always on him. And that's a mentality that I can get behind, I can respect, and I really like it. But then and I've already said I'd boot Process way before I boot Sin. I think Sin is just a better player than Process as well. But to me, that just raises the question of why the fuck is Sin there then? Like, what's the point in Sin? Like, okay, yeah, sure, he's a better player. I've already established that. But surely the point of him is to be the fucking IGL. That's why he got brought up to the team. Like, why are we still fucking around if he's not?
I'll say something here. I think Sin is the Sin Tabsen combo is, we speak about this a lot when we have Star IGLs. And it's always in the entry pack. You're always going to have an IGL and AWP and another player. But when it's a Star IGL, like the profile has to shift. And Sin is kind of, he's more that Alexi B Apex type. Like he's the one who throws the most flashbangs on Big. He's not in that many opening duels. He's more of the supportive element to Tabsen in the pack, right? When you look at Big, it is the most defined roles you'll ever see. Okay, Tabsen is the space taker. He's the star. Sin is setting Tabsen up, and then in the mid round he's setting Krimbo up. Sin and Process are the mid round players who get fucks. Okay, so and I think Sin actually had done really well individually in the Academy League. I remember when I did the doppelganger stuff, I actually came out, he was like closest to Robs because he just didn't die. He just didn't die. He won loads of clutches and didn't die. So that was Academy level Sin. There was something there that was worth bringing up, 100%. But in terms of the IGL thing, I think while Tabsen's there, it's going to be really hard for Sin to be IGL because Tabsen's such a leader of men. Like you can see it when they're together. Like he is such a spiritual leader of that team. Whether you think that should align, like I think in 1.6 it was more of a thing where like Ave and Sonic, maybe, I don't know if it was Sonic, but maybe someone else. Ave was like the tactical one, and then you have like a different captain. And maybe Big should go for that and have Sin as IGL. But I think when they were doing the co-IGL stuff, I think they must have worked it out. They must have thought it's just better short-term taps than calling still. And I kind of know where you're coming from, but I don't know. I like Sin. I like the way he plays. I think he's clearly very smart. He's clearly in the God B school of thought and everything. And yeah, you do look at it and you think, okay, this team would be unlocked a little bit if Tabsen could be unleashed, as it were. But I think he's already. I don't think calling takes away from Tabsen's individual play as much as maybe you might think, because I think Sin is already probably doing quite a lot of mid-rounding. He's doing a lot of the bitch IGL roles. Tabsen's not doing any of those. It's Sin. It's Sin doing it. Even on CT side, like we said, they're both rotators, but there's always a little bit of give and take with rotators, and it's still Sin supporting Tabsen. It's more like Apex and Spinks than, two equal stars. It's Sin supporting Tabsen most of the time. He's still getting loads of traded deaths, even though he's a mid-round player. It's a tough role, and it's kind of the way Big have built their team is definitely for Tabsen, Krimbo, and Mantuu. to be pulling their weight. And still in the process, they're just the supportive elements. They're the young guns who are learning a lot. And will they be top players one day? Like, maybe, but it's not really their fault. I think it whenever you talk about big, it's so hard to isolate the actual players because the roles are so set. There's not much freedom for them. But yeah, he's clearly wants to be an IGL, but it'd be good for him, I think, to be under Tabsen. He's young. He's not going to be an IGL this year, but next year, like, how long's Tabsen going to stay around? Like, he should stay around for ages. Like, he's going to be.
I think he'll be around a while.
Yeah, and then for Sin, what does that mean? Does that mean he needs to, eventually maybe Tabsen will stay around for a while, but as IGL, and then he will not want to be a star anymore, and then Sin can take a little bit more room. Maybe that's the way the balance works. I don't know.
Maybe Krimbo eventually leaves and he steps into Krimbo's roles.
Yeah, I think
he'd be the one that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how well my doppelganger thing actually works for Academy. Like, I didn't look into positions and stuff, but yeah, why not? But yeah, they've. The thing with Sin is that I just don't think it's his fault. I think he's...
No, I don't.
Like you said, he's serviceable. He's very, very serviceable. I think if you're going to look at big, the star power has to come from Tabsen, Mantuu, Krimbo, basically.
Yeah, and I think, this is probably the time where it's worth talking about the roster, because we're getting into that point where we've spoke about the star power and we've spoke about the supportive elements, and now we can get into how do you actually turn big into a team where it feels like, in the last 2 years, we've seen some we've seen some teams become the kind of like dominant forces at the top and be the ones that are making playoffs consistently, but we've seen some outliers get there. We've seen fucking Movistar Riders make Cologne semi-finals. We've seen Virtus Pro win a major. Outsiders win a major. I mean, that entire major was cooked, but like, you know what I mean? Like, there are teams out there that have some amount of potential in them to go far once a year, and I just don't see it from this big team, which is where, and it's why I pushed roster conversations, is I think big need to redefine the way they look at their roster, and we've spoke about this a few times in a few different ways. So before we do that, the question I want to ask you is, because we already came up with I'd thought of a title for this episode, but then we've came up with a German team that's better than one I thought of off the top of my head beforehand, mildly because I forgot Searson existed.
Hey. We'd also Favin. So, I think Favin, illness aside, Favin would be in there for process too, probably. I think Favin's a really good player. He just wasn't available. Like, he's fucking Thiago.
Yeah. Fair. But yeah, so is Germany different to... Because we did our episode on NIP and the Swedish scene, and obviously, we've spoke a lot about Denmark, and I still think there could be two strong Danish teams, even though we've only now really got one. Heroic still have their core, but we've only got one. And Russia, you can make 17 different strong teams from their talent pool.
Like, I mean, they have.
You've got these nations that you can make teams that are competitive or at least fun. Do you think Germany and big sits in that bracket or not?
I think Sweden was like borderline in terms of like it being worth it, because in terms of talent, I think that Swedish team would, for me, maybe like not amazing, but top 20, and also it would be fun.
Okay. The
German team, I think, I don't know, their ceiling is definitely a bit lower. Like, I think, like, I just opened up like Big Academy because I wondered what was coming through, and it's hyped, has like a 1.2 rating CS2.
He's pants. We've
seen him in CS2. There's a Sky guy who's a rifler. He actually has 117 rating. I'm not going to pretend I've watched him play, but there's something there. That's like that's as good as Sin was playing in the academy, I think, if not better.
Let me rephrase. Right. So what was the Swedish team we put together? It was Hampus.
Oh, God. You
Hampus,
sacked off
Nork,
Broland, didn't you?
Hampus, Nork,
Rez.
Isaac. No, I think it was Brolan. I think we
Maybe
said
Rez
no
Brolan.
Rez. Well, Rez or Brolan, and who was the
Oh, God.
Hampus? Fuck.
Was it a Calais pick? Was it like Nilo or something stupid?
Yeah, it was probably a Calais.
Probably.
But, so you put that team against the German team we said earlier, Tabsen, JDC, Searson, Krimbo, Sin. Who wins?
I think Big do. I think Big have a tactical identity. I think the thing with Sweden is that everyone forgets is that they're not like a tactical country. Like having the national team wouldn't give them an edge tactically. They played like international teams in 2013. They just had the best players, so it was fine. So I think I'd always back a Big team over a Swedish team, honestly. I just think the way they think about the game is just, it is better. It is better. It elevates their players. Maybe that's another reason why Krimbo wants to stay. Maybe he is a bit of a system boy. Who knows? So I think the team we built. The thing that's, when it comes to roster changes, is how worth it is it for JDC over Process? Like, how much better is JDC? Probably not enough to pay for him.
Isn't JDC absolutely smashing tier 2 at the moment?
Yeah, he's smashing tier 2, but Process has a 1.05 rating online. Like, it's hard to know. It's hard to know. I don't think that either of them are bad players, and it's such a tough role. It's like we always talk about how marginal an upgrade is. Like, if upgrading your anchor, like your anchor has to be bad for it to be worth it.
Hang on, you've said that, right? Me and you, we look a bit silly now because of gym fat, but me and you were oddly high on JDC. I've watched JDC play enough, and I've watched Process play enough to know that JDC is a better player.
He is better, but I was just like ideologically against spending buyouts on your fifth best player.
That's fine, but he is a better player, and if we're talking about improving Big, that's important because. And the title of the video might change, but originally, if it does change, it was, why is Germany different to Sweden? And this is the avenue I wanted to go down. Well, there's that, but I meant it more in a, we did a whole episode about having a Swedish team again, and then in this episode, I was going to suggest that Big move away from a German team, and I think I am still going to suggest that. To be honest, it's one of the episodes I've come in with a more open mind, and for me, the difference is that with Sweden, it's been so long since we've actually had a team that felt Swedish. Like NIP might have had a Swedish core, but did they feel fucking Swedish? Did they feel like they had a Swedish core in the same way? Like, does this heroic really feel like it has a Danish core? Because they do, but when you've got the rosters that they have, they don't actually feel like they belong to Sweden. They don't feel like they belong to Denmark. And to me, that was the difference. It was, we've seen Big be competitive, and we're talking like in the duration that me and you have been into Counter-Strike, sure. But we've seen Big be competitive. We've seen them make major playoffs. We've seen them make Cologne final. We've seen them fucking be the best team in the world in the online era. So it doesn't really count. But
it was never with the German roster. It was with fucking Smooyer and then with Antares.
Yeah. But they did, they at least felt German. Big has always felt German. Maybe because they've always come back to commit to Germany. And for me, the difference between Sweden and Germany is it doesn't feel like anyone had committed to Sweden for a long time. But with Big, it felt like maybe to become something better, they just needed to not commit to Germany. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that, though?
I just think you're missing the point on what makes Big tick. I think Big's the entire reason to exist for Big is to be German. It's Berlin International Gaming. All their sponsors are German. They've got Tabsen and Krimbo signed to long-term deals on the assumption that they're representing the German scene. You can't move away from it as much as, and also I don't think it's even worth it. Like, okay, international. So you keep Tabsen Krimbo, and then with your like budget of £2, you go international. What happens then? Like it's not just that they're like, love the German scene. It's that it's a really small org. It doesn't have money. It uses academy players because, to be honest, it has to. Like we talked, that's why I'd love JDC to be in the best German team, but they're not paying a buyout. They're not doing it, and now they've let Sisson go. And
surely his buyout can't be that much though. Like, surely.
Where does Big ever paid a buyout? Remind me.
No, I know, but they must have paid buyouts. They must have paid buyouts to Sprout.
Yes, to Sprout. They spend all that. They have a fucking bank in the corner, and everyone puts a quid in it to pay this overpriced Sprout buyout once a year. So maybe it'll be in the 0-0 Nation buyout, and they'll get JDC. But that's what the point I'm making is. It's identity matters, and this is the ultimate reason why I was for a Swedish team. It wasn't because I thought the team was going to be any good. Sorry, Gala, it wasn't going to be. It's because it's fun. It's because it's the spirit of old CS to have national teams. You were
positive in that episode.
Of course I was. But in terms of the players, they were always going to be bad, mate. They were always going to be top 15 tops. Of course they were. But it would have been way more fun than watching OG play. And I like what OG are doing, to be fair. Like they've got like 4 19-year-olds. But anyway, getting away from it. Point is, Big should stay German, at least identity-wise. And I don't even care. Even if it makes them worse, firepower-wise, I'd sack off Mantuu and get Slacks in. Or try hyped again. I know you don't rate them as highly.
I certainly wouldn't try hyped. I'm not against. I'm not. No, I am against trying Slacks because Searson exists.
They're not getting Sisson back. If Searson's left, he's left for a reason. Ultimately, I don't know the behind the scenes what happened, but Searson leaving Big is probably just what's going to kill that. It's probably what's going to kill it dead.
Yeah.
But I like Big existing. I think the scene is better for Big existing. They offer tactical variety at these events. Like even Blast Spring groups, everyone's going to moan about fucking OG now because he Gia gun. But no one will moan about Big. Big will go out 3rd or 4th every group stage they're ever in. But they offer something different. They offer a different test to teams. And it's just fun having these teams around. And it's a shame. Like it's kind of the Furia thing where it's a shame that it locks away talent like Tabsen and Krimbo. Like what kind of career could Tabsen have had? What kind of career is Krimbo maybe going to miss out on? But I think it's cool that they have different motivations. I think it's not the Michael Jordan way of looking at it, but it is still a cool way to think about a career and trying to prop up a scene that has no right to have a top 20 team. Maybe it can, and I think that speaks to Godby, and it speaks to a long-standing tactical identity that runs through the main team and the academy team, and that is just a cool thing to have in the space, I think. And ultimately, most of the discussion about Big isn't whether they're going to be good, because that's not really the point of Big. And that's just where I'm always going to be at with them. I think they're always going to be a decent team with Krimbo and Tabsen around. But yeah, like a German super team, it's not going to make a difference. They're still not going to win anything. So ultimately, it's more about the identity and actually feeling like you're representing your country. And that's fine. And maybe they can win a fucking World Cup one day, because who knows?
Okay. I hear what you're saying, and maybe they wouldn't win anything past a challenger, which is a win itself, and I feel like we shouldn't overlook challenger wins, to be honest. As
challenger wins are really good. The good teams win challenges. It's VP and Monty every time. They're good teams.
Yeah. But I actually think if JDC could come up playing even half as good as he is recently, I actually think a German team with Searson, and Searson is the big one here. Tabsen, Searson, Sin, JDC, Krimbo could be a lot better than we are maybe saying they are, and they could make a playoffs or two.
Yeah,
in a year,
1 or 2 a year.
Like, and actually, it's a team that you wouldn't be too surprised about. But to go back to the hypotheticals that I wanted to raise, which obviously I know you have a problem with, but you're fun to try and make flip-flop, and it's fun to play devil's advocate. So I think there's two ways that you can look at big and kind of raise the question of should they redefine their roster. And one of them is more redefining goals. So if we stick with what they've got now, then for big, and this is kind of tied to OG, or at least what OG seem to be doing now, and what Fnatic seem to be doing now with who they've just signed, and Mouse have done it for years, Ents have done it for years, and should big redefine their roster to a point, and redefine their goals to a point where they look at it, and instead of looking at a player like Tabsen or a player like Krimbo, they look at it as a way to get these players, develop these players, and end up making a buck off them rather than keeping them around. And, would that be a better outlook, or is that just signing yourselves onto an inevitable road to becoming an international team? Because eventually, if you do that, you are just going to have to promote academy prospects who aren't ready. Or should they redefine their roster to look at a team like Heroic, where Heroic have, and I guess fucking Nip tried it, but also it never really felt like Nip have tried to do what Heroic are currently trying to do, where Heroic got everything they could out of the Danish scene and now are keeping hold of a Danish core and staying true to that national roots while also looking for people outside of their national base that can elevate them and get them to a point where they would be higher up on ranking leaderboards than they would be if they just stayed 5 Danish players. And the reason that I bring this up in particular for big is because, we've spoke about Mantuu, Tabsen, Krimbo as being this solid core, and it is a core that could do well. Obviously, Mantuu isn't German, but you've got Sin as this kind of supportive element who I also think would work in terms of keeping that German core, and then you could maybe look at replacing Process with someone better from a different country. And could you then look at a big, do you see the possibility where big could actually push on to be something greater than they would if they had 5 Germans, because Krimbo is such a solid basis, because Tabsen can be such a solid piece? Do you think there's a room for big to attempt to do what Heroic do? Because we said a couple of weeks ago, we think this Heroic team can still be quite relevant, at least more relevant than big are.
I think it's with where the CS scene is going, you just need to be a top 16 team in Europe. You just need to get to the major. That is kind of the model behind building a team is either you're going to lose money and win trophies, or you're going to cut just above what you need to get to a major. And what's happened with them not making the major this year is that it's kind of all fallen apart. Because if you're not making the major, you're not having buyouts. They're not spending any money. It's not like Astralis missed the major and then we're like, fuck, we got to spend money now and got Sound and Yabby. They're not going to miss a major for a while now.
Funny if they do.
Big won't be able to do that. Big can't do that. So it's fun. It's fun in games to talk about an international big, but without the ability to spend on buyouts, it's just not possible. I don't think it's worth it for them as an organization. What your point about Krimbo and Tabsen and maybe being more of a talent farm, I think that ultimately would be better for the German scene. And as much as I've talked about it being really fun and everything, I think what they should be aiming to do is get players like Searson and Krimbo, get them to a level where they can play at Tier 1 and then sell them for a shit ton of money, because I'm sure they could have sold them for a shit ton of money. And then you develop the German scene, but in a way where German players can actually be relevant and win trophies. Because that's kind of the thing, that's the way NIP talk about Sweden is. They still love the Swedish scene as much as people will hate them and blah, blah, blah. But their goal is to have Swedish players winning trophies, and ultimately that is only possible in an international team. And I think keeping Krimbo in big, it is the case the right thing. As much as I really respect his attitude behind it, it is the case the right thing. This is a guy who should be on a trophy-winning team. He just should be. He should be on a team that is going to win a trophy this year, and he's not. And he's not. And it's just a shame, but it's an ideological thing. But I agree with you. I actually think it's a really good point. They should be looking at OG and Fnatic were tired of being a shit international team with old players, so be a shit international team with young players. And one or two of them might be good, and you can sell them. And that's what the problem with Big is, that the talent well will dry up so quickly. So you sell Krimbo and then you promote Sky or something, and then it's like, okay, maybe one of the next players is good, and then you sell them. I think that the talent farm approach is an international approach ultimately. That's why I think that wouldn't work. Like you can see, like Fnatic, like they're all over Europe. Everyone's all over Europe trying to find these people. Like the heavy gods, the Mattis, the QB is German, by the way, but I guess he's not.
Yeah, but no idea if he's any good. I watch that team play.
Yeah, I mean it's
I'll watch that team play when I'm forced to.
Yeah, so that's the thing with Big. That's the thing. I just think they're at this really hard place where they don't have the money to go higher in the ranking. The team they currently have is good enough to get to the major, but hasn't got to the major, so they're not going to have any money, at least compared to the spending power of the teams around them. And I mean, 0 Nation didn't make the major over, so maybe there's something there, but it is really disappointing for them to have not made the major, because they're so good online as well. Like, what's going on, boys? Like, this is not what should be happening. A player like Krimbo missing the major is criminal. It's absolutely criminal. And I think
I like Tabsen missing the major is criminal.
Yeah, he has to
Even
make peace with
Mantuu.
it. Because when you're signing a 7-year, like, I mean, I keep saying 7 year, I don't know how long it is. I don't know if they announced
It was long.
I think it
It was a
was
fucking
like
long
2026, 2027 or something.
Yeah, it's something like that. Like, he's there.
When you sign a contract like that, you know you're going to miss the odd major. But it'll still hurt. It'll still hurt, especially if like a team that often replaced does really well at this major. Like, he's going to be sat at home watching it and thinking, fuck. And I'm sure Caterans have had those moments too, and ultimately he's wanted to stay. But I love the idea of Big. I really, really do. But I wish Krimbo had left. Because then and then they get like an academy player or someone else, or they give Sin some star roles or whatever. Because that's the whole point, is the talent development. If Tabsen and Krimbo stay in Big forever, they're playing the 2-star rifle roles forever. How are the new players ever going to get a chance? Like Sin, I believe Sin could be a better player than he's currently showing because of roles. He's never going to get a chance to develop. Like, as much as it's about developing the German scene, in the current day when international teams are the only teams that are relevant, apart from maybe Astralis and like Furia and Russian-speaking teams, but they're whatever, they don't really count. It has to be about giving German players and not German teams the best chance to win a trophy. And the best chance for German players to win a trophy is away from Big. So if you really care about the German scene, you let Krimbo go. You do. It's better for the German scene to have someone like... You saw how they reacted to Swanee when G2 won Cologne. Well, they're gagging for a team in playoffs, man. They're cheering on a coach who, as far as I know, like they won 2 big trophies and the scene didn't even nominate him for Coach of the Year. Like, people don't rate that bloke, unfortunately. But the fucking Cologne crowd did. If they got a vote, Jesus, they're Coach of the Year, boys. So it's that thing of... It's the thing with JKS as well. JKS leaving Australia didn't make him a villain in Australia. And I don't think Krimbo leaving Big would have made him a villain either.
It's the same with... I know he's not been on a UK team for a very long time, but it's the same thing with us and Mezzi, isn't it?
Yeah, everyone's cheering on Mezzi all the time. I think Krimbo could have had that. And I think it's a real shame
Colt even changed his flag and we still support him.
Yeah, well, Mantuu. We're claiming Mantuu. We're always going to claim Mantuu.
He's ours as well, isn't it?
He's ours.
But, Hades is basically ours.
Yeah, he's Southend, isn't he? So this is what we're talking about here.
Shuey lived in Ireland. We've got the same scene as Ireland.
Yeah, Revel Province.
They're all
anyway. Anyway.
Point is, a lot for you, Harry. Jesus.
Yeah, we've got Irish friends. It's fine.
Not
Krimbo, I'm really sad. When I saw he signed that contract, I was really sad. I really, really was. And I love Big. But I want Big to be a talent development place, not a talent lock away and die place. You know, and that's ultimately the thing.
Just to switch it up, the point I made about Heroic, do you think there's a player out there that,
no,
given the roles on the team, Big might be able to get?
There's not an international role player that's available for the price Big can pay, and also like that good. I don't know, like maybe JDC's honestly might be the best bet in terms of profile for Process's roles. Like Process's roles are so bad. They're so bad.
They are rough.
The fact he's above a 1.0 online is he's doing something right. Okay, and we can talk about LAN. They're all bad on LAN. They're in group. I think it's Group D, right? It's the Cloud9, VP, Big, and Heroic in Group D of Blast. And on paper they should be last. They've not got a good seed. They're gonna, but it's not like they're not gonna get 30 nodes like OG got done by Vitality, right? So they can look at it, and they can look at it in a way where...
Yeah, but they also don't have to play Vitality.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. They should be more competitive. But ultimately, they're not good. If they get
Only
out of the
because
group,
of
I'd
the
be
teams
surprised.
they're playing, though.
But I'd be surprised if they beat those teams. And if you're at the point where you're surprised if they're not fourth in a group, I don't know, man. Like, if it is a results business, and honestly, I don't think Big operate in a results business. I think maybe the major is the only thing that's actually important to that. So we'll see how they do missing the major, but I don't think it's a results business, because if it's a results business, you wouldn't be doing this. They would have stopped doing this ages ago. When they had Xantares and were really fucking good, they would have gone, we'll keep our good German players and then develop that way. But they didn't do that. They let Xantares go, and they went back to full German and were very happy doing what they're doing now. And I don't want it to seem like I think they're happy being bad. I don't think they're happy being bad. I just think they're happy being the best a German team can be. And maybe they're not that because of the missing players like Sis and JDC, Fav and whatever. But I still think that's the philosophy, and that's why I don't think going... Because you're right about Heroic doesn't feel Danish. If Big had 2 international players and kind of lent in... Because I think it's a little bit about... You think about the franchise player kind of thing. I think Big would still feel German if it was a Krimbo Tabsen team. Like, Heroic doesn't feel German because... Doesn't feel Danish because you think of them and you think of Nerds first, probably. I think that's a big factor. I mean, your star players have to still be German.
Even Nika does. Like, I'm not really thinking of him first.
Yeah.
And like when you talk about the idea of the Danish franchise there, what, Tessers and Shush?
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. Whereas at least Big, like, if they replace Process with an international player, it'd be a role player. But that's why I think it's not worth it. That's why what I would actually do is just sack off Mantuu and get a German, because I could balls to the wall, boys. Like, if you could ever ruin people's careers, at least speak your native language. That's ultimately my take on Big.
Okay.
In a sentence.
So, and with that said, I came into this episode thinking, yeah, you'll jump on the whole like talent development thing, but obviously we've said what we've said about Germany now, and for once I'll do the flip flopping. I'm kind of with you. I agree with the whole sell Krimbo angle. They should have sold Tabsen. I agree with that angle, but I also think actually, and yeah, admittedly it is because I forgot a player existed, but I do think actually you could get a top 10 challenging team out of Germany. I think a team with JDC and Searson in it would spend as long in the top 10 as I think this Heroic team would spend in the top 10.
Yeah.
In a year. So, with that being said, maybe Big should reinvigorate their roster, but maybe they shouldn't redefine their roster. Sure, okay, redefine the goals, look to elevate people more than being something for fans to not get to watch unless ESL decide to do a show match in Cologne just so Big get to walk out on stage. Like, be something more, mean something more to the actual height of the German scene. Let these players shine even if it's elsewhere. But if you're not going to do that, just give it a fucking go. Get Searson, get JDC, and give it a fucking go. Don't be a jail. Be, I don't know, whatever the fucking... The actual height of Big could be. It might be another Cologne final. It might be an overperformance into a Cologne final because that's their major. And if it's that, fine. But this team will never even overperform and make a playoff. So, what the fuck's the point? Because you're also just holding down talent. So with that, I think, it's time to do the weekly turnaround that no one ever really responds to because no one's watching at this point. But what would you do with the big roster? Would you just sell Krimbo and let him be free, or would you maybe actually find a way to locate some money and spend that money to make a more competitive team? Other than that, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I was meant to bring up fantasy leagues earlier on, but I didn't do that. So if you're stupid enough to still be watching, go sign up to our fantasy leagues. There probably won't be a link in the description because people don't really update those. But yeah, I've been Sam Alamo Mackenzie. He's been Harry Dickhead Richards. And catch you in the next one when we talk about a team that we haven't yet decided. But maybe Falcons again, because Boros is really bad and we can just spend half an hour talking about how bad he is. We'll see you later.